This show is brought to you in part by viewers like you who joined a Patreon or become YouTube members. Thank you. And if you could, hit the like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
We've spent a lot of time talking about what the Cleveland Browns have done so far in free agency, or what they could do, what they haven't done, but we haven't really focused on the rest of the AFC North yet. So this is going to be the first chance this offseason things have slowed down enough for us to get the opportunity to go and talk about the Cincinnati Bengals, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Baltimore Ravens, what they did in their off-season period so far, what I like about it, what I don't like about it. Let's start with the Cincinnati Bengals, who did a lot of retaining, right? I think the theme of the Cincinnati Bengals off-season was reloading, right? You ended the season strong last year. You were the most dangerous team that didn't get in, quote unquote. That's what a lot of people were saying, right? You're riding that wave, hoping that you stay healthy, you figure some things out defensively, and you become an 11-12 win team again. And because you have Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, you're hoping that that can put you over the top versus a Kansas City Chiefs team that does not seem to have that same level of firepower offensively. So that was the philosophy, I think, for Cincinnati. Reload. Let's get another shake at it. Let's have another healthy year of Joe Burrow. Let's keep our veterans, and let's see if we can make some small adjustments on the defense that help this kind of play better with Al Golden. So they got a new defensive coordinator in Al Golden, former head coach in Miami Hurricanes, current was last seen as the defensive coordinator for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. They re-signed Joseph Osai to a one-year deal, Cam Sample to a one-year deal, brought back B.J. Hill on 3 years, $33 million, so about $11 million a year for B.J. Hill. And, of course, Mike Gesicki, Cody Ford, they brought back. T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, they brought back. And I think they got him Belf on decent enough money. The T. Higgins deal seems like a really good deal for the Cincinnati Bengals, given that I think the details came out. It's only 1 year guaranteed. Cincinnati, I think they got fortunate here, right? If you're going to keep an expensive wide receiving core, this is the one to keep, and this is the price to keep them at, and the contracts to keep them at. I'm not a big fan of the spending. What you're spending $140 million a year on Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase. That's a lot of money going towards a passing offense. Especially when not enough of that money has been allocated to the offensive line. Like, you got a couple of draft picks there, but the interior looks really weak. You didn't get to get Tevin Jenkins because the Browns got Tevin Jenkins. So you don't really have a great answer there at guard. But I think if you're the Bengals, you're going into the draft, you don't have a guard. This is a good year to get a guard in the draft, right? And you might be able, if you swing early enough, to get you a guy who could start day one, like a Donovan Jackson. So not really. I don't think they're in a bad spot. Defensive interior, they need to improve there. This draft's going to be strong. Running back, they need to improve there, right? The areas where this draft is weak, quarterback, wide receiver, they just secured up two of the better options you can have in the NFL at that spot. So, I think the Bengals, if they draft well this offseason, will be set up to be pretty good based on what they've done so far in free agency. They brought in TJ Slayton, 2 years, $15 million. Samaje Perine on a cheap deal, and then Oren Burks at linebacker. They lost Sam Hubbard. He retired. They cut Alex Kappa and Sheldon Rankings. I'm not really sweating any of what they've lost. The only open question they have right now is Trey Hendrickson. And if they're able to keep Trey, then draft well in the interior, which is a huge question mark because the Bengals have not drafted well the last couple of years. I think this is a year where it's pretty much, it's not a layup, but it's an open shot, right? Like, it's not easy to draft well for the Bengals this year, but it's an open shot because what they need, this draft has tons of running backs, tons of tight ends, tons of defensive interior, Tons of that, right? Like guards that can also play a little bit of tackle. Tons of that, right? This draft has a lot of what they're looking for in tons. Not a ton of corners, but they drafted a ton of secondary players, but there are some good safeties in this draft, some solid linebackers. This is a draft the Bengals should be able to draft well on. If they do that, I think they'll be fine, as long as they retain Trey. If they don't retain Trey, it starts to get a little bit more hectic, because I firmly believe the Bengals are at their best when they have a good defense to pair with Joe Burrow. I talked to Ace about this on AFC North Talk, and he made the point, which I think is a fair point. Zach Taylor's not a good coach in his eyes, so he thinks you need to have T. Higgins and Jamar Chase combined to be able to have the offense that the Bengals want to have, because you have to have that talent to overcome your coach. I think eventually they got to just consider not having to go over that obstacle, right? If you have to pay somebody $30 million a year because your coach is not good, that says more about the decisions you're making at coach. But I understand the theory there. They're going to reload. I think they've had a sneaky, decent offseason. All these guys are going to be free of the contract talks. It kind of reminds me of what the Cavs did in the offseason, except for they didn't fire the coach, right? And I think if the Bengals had fired Zach Taylor after this season, hired somebody, imagine like Ben Johnson with this offensive crew, or somebody, I think they would be doing kind of a similar thing to what the Cavs did, because you're just returning all of these good players. You don't have to overcome the coach anymore offensively, and then you can spend this draft really investing on the defense, and I think he'll come out of it really good. Either way, I think the Bengals have had a pretty good offseason. I think they've gotten better. The Steelers, they've had an interesting offseason, I would say. Highs and lows in this offseason. So they re-signed Ben Skoranek. They re-signed Scotty Miller, Isaiah Loudermilk. None of these guys are going to be needle movers, but they are solid depth pieces. Free agency is where things got a little bit weird for the Steelers, right? They make the big move. They trade the second-round pick. They get DK Metcalf. And then they pay DK Metcalf $30 million. Now, what I find interesting about this, I mean, there's a million things I find interesting about the Steelers trading for DK Metcalf. One, you have been hesitant to pay George Pickens. You trade for somebody who has skills that overlap with George Pickens. You pay him the money that would seemingly be allotted to George Pickens, but the player you did it for is significantly older than George Pickens, on a team that does not have a realistic path to a championship anytime soon. It's a curious decision, right? Like, is DK Metcalf better than George Pickens? I think you can make the argument that he is. Is he more reliable than George Pickens? I think you can certainly make that argument. The problem with that argument is this. DK Metcalf's getting older. Like, what window are you really loading up for? This is a Steelers team right now that doesn't have a quarterback. Like, I don't know what exactly is the ultimate goal for the Steelers this season. Juan Thornhill, they brought him in. He's all right, right? I think Juan Thornhill is better than a lot of Browns fans think that Juan Thornhill is, but Juan Thornhill is not like a world breaker. He's a really good run defender, a solid tackler at the free safety position, but he's just not a playmaker in passing downs. Like, he'll be there. He won't get lost. He's a veteran back there, but he's not going to be a difference maker in passing downs more often than not. But that's fine for what the money you signed Juan Thornhill to be. Mason Rudolph, bringing him back was a curious move. Darius Slay playing corner, okay, it makes sense. Malik Harrison, another curious move. And then you get Daniel Aquale, which I think is a solid enough move there. Just don't know what the direction is for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I don't really know if they got better. I think they got different names on the team. Are you going to keep George Pickens, right? That's a big open question for the Pittsburgh Steelers right now. Like, is George Pickens still going to be on this team by the end of this year, or are you going to have to trade him this year or next offseason? I don't know the answer to that. Who's going to be playing quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers? Will it be Aaron Rodgers, right? It looks like Aaron Rodgers is waffling between a bunch of teams, really taking his time. I think it'll be Aaron. Aaron's been flirting with the possibility of becoming a Steeler for a very long time now. Like, he's always had this open love affair with Mike Tomlin, so it might make sense that that goes down. But what if Aaron decides he wants to go to the Giants because he doesn't want to move his stuff? Which is a very real thing. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, if you look at like the Giants and the Jets free agent history, or back when Oakland used to be, when the Raiders used to be in Oakland, and you would see like there's constantly transferring of players going from San Francisco to Oakland. Same thing from New York to New York. The sell of not having to move your stuff is very, very appealing to NFL players, especially that live there. And Aaron does live in New York, so like him not having to have to worry about what his living arrangement would be in Pittsburgh for a year or two probably seems like a positive to him. And that's probably why Russ is gravitating towards going to New York too. But it seems like you done pissed off Russ during this whole process. Now, I don't know if Russ is so mad that he would say, hey, I'm not going to go back if New York doesn't want me because they got Aaron Rodgers. I'm going to go to Cleveland instead or something like that. Because basically Pittsburgh has basically told Russ, like, we don't want you back. They went after Justin Fields, offered him money to start. He didn't take it. Now they're going after Aaron Rodgers. He may or may not take that. And then after that, like, what do you go to? Do you go back to Russ? Is that relationship going to be the same as it was last year, given how this free agency period was handled? We know Russ is not above being a little bit petty, especially if he feels like you don't want Russ, right? Like, that's been a thing before. So that's a tough spot for Pittsburgh to be in. I don't know what they got going on at quarterback. The move for DK, again, it makes them better this year at wide receiver. Long term, I don't know if that will end up being the right move, because George is much younger than DK. Maybe there are more red flags going on behind the scenes. And I will just put this out there right now before the George Pickens trade rumors start. I am never in favor of trading for a former Mike Tomlin wide receiver. It's literally never worked out. Anybody else could do it, right? Chase Claypool, Martavis Bryant, Antonio Brown, any wide receiver the Steelers have decided to trade, Deontay Johnson. It's been disastrous, right, for the team that takes him. I would never recommend trading for a Mike Tomlin wide receiver. So, Pittsburgh, their offseason was a bit confusing to me. I don't really know how they view themselves. I view Pittsburgh as a middle-class team, and they made moves that you think in some areas would be about maintaining that status, right? Juan Thornhill on a cheap deal, bringing back Mason Rudolph, Malik Harrison. But they also made some moves that are more fitting for a team trying to win now, like getting DK Metcalf and then extending DK Metcalf to a big contract. Not really sure what the Steelers want to do. I don't love their offseason, but I don't think it's bad. They draft well. They'll be fine. Baltimore, another free agency kind of similar to Cincinnati, where they just kind of wanted to keep guys in, right? They feel good about what they have built. They feel like they can add on top of what they have in the draft, right? Like their free safety solutions probably coming in the draft, maybe a wide receiver. They were able to add DeAndre Hopkins, Nelson Aguilar, who was good for them a couple of years ago. They brought him back. And then Cooper Rush, they brought him to be the backup quarterback. That is an interesting one. Cooper Rush is the backup quarterback. I don't get that one. Like, usually with Lamar's backups, you tend to have people who can mimic what Lamar wants to do. Cooper Rush behind Lamar is a bit curious. I don't know what the plan is there, but maybe it works out, right? Baltimore does get a little bit of benefit of the doubt here based on their past track record. Bringing back Ronnie Stanley, Ben Cleveland, Pat Ricard. The thing with Baltimore that I think a lot of people are going to be sleeping on that they shouldn't is they made this huge bet last year that they were going to go into the offseason, well, not go into the offseason, go into the regular season with 3 new starters on their offensive line. And it worked out. And they got much younger and much cheaper on that offensive line. And I think that line's going to get better as the years go on. I think Roger Rosengarten's going to play better. I think the guys that they're going to get better on that interior on top of being able to keep Ben Cleveland, being able to keep Ronnie Stanley. So no, Baltimore didn't make a big splash here. They got another wide receiver. I think D-Hop is a big deal. Getting Nelson Aguilar back is a big deal. It takes a lot of the pressure off of Zay Flowers. Do I think that either of these wide receivers are at a point in their career where they're going to get you 1,000 yards? No. But getting 500 or 400 from Nelson will be solid. Getting 700 from DeAndre Hopkins and having him as an end zone threat will be solid. You have Isaiah Likely. This is a very strong tight end class. So if you want to trade Mark Andrews and add a new tight end, I think that makes a ton of sense for Baltimore. Baltimore's in a really good place to be able to reload and reset. The question with Baltimore isn't if they're talented enough to win a Super Bowl or if they have enough on the roster to win a Super Bowl. They do. It's if they can take advantage of the opportunities they get to win a Super Bowl. That's where Baltimore is. The last few years, they've had opportunities to get to a Super Bowl. They haven't been able to execute. It's getting to the point to where they're starting to get that. Well, not even starting. They got that funk on them now, right? Where you look at Baltimore and you kind of just go, ain't going to do nothing this year. The same way you do with Buffalo. These teams that are always kind of in the conversation, but have never really found a way to break through, even after being given multiple opportunities to break through. So I think that's where Baltimore is, and those are the questions that Baltimore has to answer. Right now, if you're the Browns, I think the competition right now at the bottom of the division is between you and Pittsburgh. We know Pittsburgh has that track record for not going under 500. The Browns do not have that track record. So, it's a bit of an uphill climb, but I think the Browns roster-wise coming into the season are fine. The question is, can they get, with the Browns, the big question is, can they get quarterback play that is at least Kirk Cousins level, at least where Russ was last year? If the Browns can get that, I think they can be competitive with Pittsburgh. Maybe it depends on Cincinnati because they're a very top-heavy team. They don't really have much depth. So if Cincinnati has to go through some attrition during the year, they could be significantly worse than what we project here. But I think the Browns are in a okay spot, as okay as you could be with absolutely no answer at quarterback right now. The big question is, where does that quarterback come? What is the solution at quarterback, at least for 2025? And how much is it going to cost you, right? Is it going to cost you the second pick in the draft? Is it going to cost you the 32nd pick in the draft, 33rd pick in the draft, and the fourth? Is it going to cost you, a late round pick to trade for Kirk Cousins? Is it going to cost you $20-30 million to go get Russell Wilson or something like that? That's really the question the Browns have to answer. I think if they get regular below average starting quarterback play, they'll be fine. The same way Pittsburgh was fine last year, but they got to find a way to get it. And right now, the only guy on their roster is Kenny Pickett, and that's the guy that the Steelers got Russ to upgrade from. So, not really a good sign there. So we'll see what happens with everything else, but that's kind of the picture of the AFC North. Y'all let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Have a great day. Have a better night. Peace.